everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. If you'd like to join us, you'll find the schedule for upcoming sessions in our monthly newsletter. You can sign up at lindanickell.com/happiness hour. Tonight's guest is Randy Robbins. Randy is a California-based photographer whose portfolio covers a diverse range of subjects that include wildlife, night skies, landscapes, and other outdoor subjects. His work has been featured in Outdoor Photography Magazine, the Journal of Wildlife Photography, and the San Francisco Chronicle. And that's just naming a very small few number of them. Randy's photographs have been recognized in numerous wildlife and nature photography contests. Most recently, his image, Full Circle, was awarded as highly commended in the prestigious Wildlife Photographer of the Year contest. In tonight's presentation, Capturing the Wild, Mastering Camera Traps and Off-Camera Lighting for Elusive Wildlife, Randy will share the secrets and his tips for capturing gallery-worthy images of wildlife such as bobcats, mountain lions, wolves, bears, and foxes. You can connect with Randy through his website at randyrobbinsphotography.com. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel at Randy Robbins Photography. And if you're on Instagram, you can find him at Randy Robbins Photography. I love it when people use the same name for all of their branding. So with that, welcome to the Happiness Hour, Randy.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
And congratulations on being recognized as one of the Wildlife Photographers of the Year. So we asked you right before we started if you were going to show that winning photo, and you said, "Oh, it's really not my presentation." I want you to show it, and I want you to tell us the story about it because I think it's a really cool photo. And I'm hoping you'll say what I want you to say about it. And if not, I will tell everybody. So.
All right. Well, I got quick and I found it online and put it on my PowerPoint here. So I'm going to share my screen.
Okay. Well,
I'll stop sharing in a second, but that's the image. If you can see me now.
I can. It's great.
I called it Full Circle. So the story is that I have trail cameras on my property, and I have like a chunk of woods kind of on the property, and the deer are like the most common subjects that come through, and I've got these families of deer, and I'm pretty certain that I saw this deer raise a few sets of fawns on my property over a few years. And I was out checking trail cameras and came across this scene, and it was striking in that it looked really peaceful to me in the moment. I was carrying a 400 millimeter lens, so I couldn't really get the photo that I wanted. So I actually got my cell phone out and took this photo with my iPhone. And I think just because it was frozen the way it was, and there's like the leaf kind of behind the head that looks like the other ear, just kind of makes this sort of, I don't know, there's this peaceful element to the photo. And it struck me that this is kind of in a way, this is the goal for all life. Like it was a life well lived and completed. This mom raised babies and avoided predators, and there was no sign of like predation or anything like that. Like the deer had been killed. It was like she just laid down and went to sleep and was done living. And it just struck me that like this is kind of everything's fate, and now she's finished her job, and so I almost didn't take the photo just because death is kind of taboo and weird, and but I did, and the rest is history. I guess I read the category descriptions for the Wildlife Photographer of the Year contest, which I've entered a few times, but this last year I read the description for the natural artistry category, and it was like it was describing this photo. So I submitted it, not even thinking that it was a big deal that it was a cell phone photo, but it wound up being the first ever awarded cell phone photo in that contest, which if you're not familiar with that contest, it's probably the most prestigious photography contest. So it was almost a little cocky to enter a cell phone photo at all, I think, but I wasn't really thinking about that. And the jury kind of, saw what I saw in it. So it was a big honor to be sort of singled out for it.
And clearly, it didn't matter if it was a cell phone or the most expensive mirrorless camera. It's the story, and it's it's powerful. So congratulations. That's a wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
it was an
thank
honor.
yeah. Okay, so with my introduction, what did I miss? Feel free to fill in the blanks if there's something that you
I don't know. That was pretty flattering. I'm hoping I can live up to that.
no
Um,
pressure. I'm sure you can.
yeah. So I'm in a town called Susanville, California, the northeastern part of California. I'm in Latham County. We have winter, we have mountains, we have elevation, and no palm trees in this part of the state. It was like 18 degrees, I think, when I woke up this morning. Um, so it's kind of the other part of California. So I've got a gallery. I'm in my gallery right now, and that's relatively new to my photography journey. I opened my gallery in it's been about a year and a half. So early part of 23, and it's been going really well. I've started doing my own printing. I print canvases and fine art photo prints, and if anybody has questions about that stuff, that's a different presentation probably. But the printing journey is a long road also. But I'm really enjoying that, and the gallery's going well. So we're gonna just ride this wave as long as we can. So
So I know the answer, but you tell us the name of your gallery.
my gallery is called 1,000 Windows, and that's my website also, Randy Robbins Photography, or 1,000windows.com, and that comes from a John Muir quote um, in his book My First Summer in the Sierra, which is fairly local to where I'm at. I'm a huge John Muir fan, but he has a quote where he talks about these vast, calm, measureless mountain days opening 1,000 windows for us to see God. And I feel like that really speaks to what I hope to kind of do through my photography. And just it was the obvious choice for a gallery name for me. So
It's perfect. So, all right. With that, if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, we're ready.
okay, so yeah, one thing that I am into is camera trapping, and it seemed just kind of looking through previous speakers in your archives, no one had really addressed it, and I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about. So we'll talk about what camera trapping is versus trail cameras. Camera trapping is difficult to sum it up in one word. Um, Trail cameras are very popular. A lot of people have trail cameras, relatively inexpensive, small cameras that you can mount on a tree and see what's out there at night. And when no one's around, they shoot infrared photos at night. And I started using those a long time ago because I have a little bit of property and I wanted to see what was out there. I'll talk about what really pushed me into camera trapping in a little bit here, but um, let's just talk about the difference between what a trail cam is and what a camera trap is. So what you're looking at on the screen now is a very basic camera trap setup. This is a Canon T7 DSLR. I've used T7s, T6s, any of the EOS line kind of cameras will work. I've used an 80D and then all the way up to like a 5D Mark IV. If you really want to leave expensive stuff in the woods, you can use any camera. But I find the sensor, the 7D and the 80D and those kind of cameras have the T7 and the 80D. They have that 24 megapixel sensor, and they really kind of seem like ideal for that because they're not super expensive on the used market, and you don't feel horrible if a bear smacks them around. But this is your basic DSLR, and I don't know if I move my mouse. Can you guys see that when I move my mouse on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so these are battery packs that just hold 6 AA batteries in each one. And those are each powering one of these. So one of these, this right here, is a receiver, and this is a trigger. All right, so the receiver gets a signal from the infrared trigger, and that's wired straight into the camera like an intervalometer or something would be. And when the camera fires, this trigger that's mounted in the hot shoe will fire the flashes. All right, so I use off-camera lighting. You basically set up a mini kind of photo studio in the woods. So this is a still frame from video, so it's kind of blurry, but it gives you the idea. So this is the whole housing kind of here. And these PVC tubes house flashes. So these are Nikon flashes that I use that are they're SB28 flashes. Everybody in camera trapping loves the Nikon SB28 flashes. They don't make them anymore. They're like 20 years old. You can still get them on eBay, but they have an incredibly long standby time. They'll go to sleep and the batteries will last for like a week. It's amazing. The little things on the bottom of the flashes are triggers that, or receivers that communicate with the trigger that's in the camera's sort of hot shoe. So when the camera senses motion, I gotta move my little bar here on my screen so I can point. This is the infrared trigger, and this works very much like a motion light would, and you can see the little screen on there. When that senses motion, you can program it to do a lot of different things. And this is a trigger made by a company called Camtraptions. And I've kind of gravitated toward using their stuff because I like it, but there are a few different companies that make triggers for this kind of system. But these will operate on multiple channels. They'll do multiple things. And the manual is like, it's very confusing. You have to download the manual and read it 5 or 6 times and figure out how you want to set it up. But the way mine works, and you can do this in a lot of different ways, but the way mine is set up is when this senses motion, it will send a, back to this other picture here, it will send a wake up signal on this channel. This trigger that's going to fire the flashes is on one channel, and this trigger that's going to fire the camera is on a different channel. So when the trigger senses motion, it sends a wake up, basically like a half press shutter signal to this receiver. And then it sends a wake up fire, like a half press, full press to this one. So then when the camera fires, the flashes are already awake and they fire in sync with the camera. So if that sounds complicated, it kind of is, and it's a pain to get it right the first time. Now you go set it up and it's easy. But the first time you set up a camera trap, stuff doesn't fire in sync, stuff doesn't fire on time. It's hard to kind of figure out how to do it. But all that to say, it's much more complicated than a trail camera, which is this little guy sitting up here. I usually put a trail camera in the neighborhood, kind of overseeing a camera trap. Is there any questions about that before I go on? I should probably, like, if you wanted me to clarify any of that,
Yeah,
that's
no,
kind of gonna.
nope, I don't see
Okay.
any. You're good.
So
Well,
when I,
let me,
yeah,
somebody was just typing as I jumped in. Let me ask you this. What settings do you use for the sensor?
okay. So on a Camtraption sensor, there are a few different ways to set it up. I set mine up with, if you're familiar with that trigger on the dip switches on the trigger, I only have number 6 turned on. And the number 6 dip switch on the trigger, this whole thing will not be this technical, by the way, for everybody else. But if you turn that one on, that's the one that lets it communicate on 2 different channels. So it will send the wake up signal to the flashes and then the wake up and fire to the camera. So I have it on photo mode, and just with that 6th dip switch turned on, the first 5 are off. And then on the sensitivity and adjustments, the dials, when you set up that way, the only dial that does anything is the sensitivity, and I have that about halfway up. So there's 3 dials on that trigger. One will make it so it just fires at night or just during the day. It's like a light level, and the other one is a timer, which isn't used in that mode either. So the other thing I should mention is when the trigger sends the signal to the camera, this is for like people that really want to get into this, the full press shutter signal that the trigger sends to the camera is 1 full second long. So it's like holding the shutter down for a full second. So I've learned over time that on the slow burst rate of like a Canon 80D or a Canon T7 on burst mode, slow burst on the 80D, but regular burst on the T7 is about 3 or 4 frames per second. And if you have external battery packs fire in your flash receivers, they'll rejuvenate fast enough to get 3 or 4 images during one of those presses from the shutter. So if you set the trigger to do multiple exposures, it will actually send an image. It'll send a full press signal every second. So it's like 4 seconds or 5 seconds. And by the time it's taken the 4th picture, the animal is gone. So I use the single button from the trigger, but a burst mode on the camera to get 3 or 4 frames each detection, if that makes sense.
So Lori's got a follow-up question. Do you set it up for day and night?
I do. And camera settings wise, you want me to go into that real quick? I use ISO to kind of compensate for that. So I will set my go-to like settings for nighttime. Let's say I'm using 3 flashes. The flashes will be set at like 1/4 power or maybe even 1/16 power. They're not very bright. And we'll get into that a little bit too, but you're kind of setting up studio lighting. So I'll have like a main light, I'll have a secondary light, and then maybe like a backlight. Sometimes I'll just use 2, sometimes 3. But assuming 3, they're probably all set at around 1/16 power. Maybe one of them's at 1/4 power. The camera, I'll have the shutter speed at 1/100th, which is plenty. At night, it doesn't matter because the flashes will freeze the subject and you won't get motion blur. During the daytime, you're kind of hoping the animal's moving a little slower at 1/100th, but usually they're just walking by, so it's not an issue. I have my my aperture, I'm usually at f8, sometimes f9 for just a little bit of forgiveness with the depth of field, because you have to set your focus point manually with a camera trap. Everything's manual because the camera can't wake up and focus in the dark, right? Then I'll use ISO to compensate for the light, for daylight and night. I'll set the max ISO when on auto in the menu. I'll set that to 1600. So if it slams all the way up in the dark, it'll only go to 1600. So that exposure will get me right with my lights. 1/100 f8, 1600 ISO, and those 3 flashes at 1/4 or 1/16. I get something I can use. In the daytime, the ISO will be on auto on the camera and it'll go down to like 100. And it usually will overexpose a little bit, but not so much that you can't compensate in the edit.
Okay. Let me slip this one in just because I don't want to lose it. Andy's question is, do the animals flip out at the shutter sound?
I'll show you some video in a minute. The answer to that is that it depends on the animal. Generally, no. I would say the only animal I've really had like bolt at the camera going off are coyotes. Coyotes are skittish. They're like notoriously skittish. Bobcats, I would say they usually stop and investigate. They'll kind of freeze, they'll look around. I've got some video of one lounging on a log in front of my camera trap, watching the flashes go off. Foxes are very curious. They'll see the flash and like look and try to figure out what the flash is. They don't really bolt. Mountain lions completely ignore it. They don't even blink. It's amazing. They just keep walking and go about their day. It's like they don't even see the flashes. Bears are notorious for swatting cameras and getting a little bit aggressive. Like they see it and they're like, I don't like that. And they take a swing at it. So depends on the animal, but I'll show you some videos. Generally, no, I would say animals don't. And that's kind of people's issue. I've entered some photo contests and things where they don't want camera trap images. And I think there's kind of a false assumption out there that it is not good for the wildlife. My response to that is that if anything, it's less intrusive than me laying out there with a camera. And I'm, training these animals to avoid human stuff. If they don't like it and they see something man-made in the woods and they leave, well, that's keeping them away from, hunters, trail cameras, or, stuff that could harm them or whatever. So I don't see the ethical issue with it. for myself. But yeah, that's kind of my take on that. But I kind of frustrated with contests, especially that don't let them. I actually have a story about that. I want to get to. I've actually won the California Wildlife Photo of the Year contest, which is a great honor and it's super fun. When I got my photo of the Lassenpack wolf, which was a camera trap image, one of the first photos of a wolf ever taken in California. They've just begun to like reintroduce themselves to the state. Everybody that I talked to was like, that photo is going to win everything because it's so rare. Nobody else had one. I entered it, and it was selected as a finalist. And even at that point, everybody was kind of like assuming. I was assuming it was going to win, and I shouldn't have been doing that. But they basically, it was not even top 3. And the next year they had a no camera trap rule in that photo contest. So it really felt like kind of a response to that one image more than anything. But I don't understand the reasoning behind that for me. But okay, let me move on. Rechargeable AA batteries are your best friend if you have a camera trap. I'd say my whole setup uses about 40 AA's. When it's all set up in the woods, there'll be 10 batteries at each flash because there's 6 in the trigger receiver and there's 4 in the flash itself. So there's 10 times 3 just for the flashes, and then there's 12 more in the camera case, and then you got the ones in the trigger and camera battery on top of that. So I use rechargeables, and I buy them in bulk. It's just kind of a thing you have to do. So that's my little recharging station in my garage there. That's a better look at the trigger too down here. That's the trigger unit, very much like a motion light. I build housings for my cameras. This is like a Pelican case that I bought at Harbor Freight. It's like a knockoff brand Pelican case. The visor that's holding the snow up here is made from a Starbucks cup that I have taped on there. Works very, very well. I glue a filter. That's a 95 millimeter filter in the front, and that's a piece of like 4-inch PVC that I've epoxied into the housing there. So the whole thing is weatherproof, and I've had it out through some pretty nasty weather. This is the trigger right here, covered with snow, and it does just fine in the weather. It's an example of another kind of setup. You can see my Starbucks visor there a little bit better, but the camera's hiding inside right behind that filter, and the trigger will be set up somewhere nearby. We'll talk about kind of the setup with some of the photos that I'm going to show you, but then the flashes will be either mounted in trees or down at ground level, kind of depending on what you want to get. Camera trapping is all about animal behavior, and a lot of people want to get images with a trail camera, and they just kind of put it out there on a tree and hope. The better way to go about it is to really look at the landscape and see where animals are probably going to be moving, depending on the animal and depending on the terrain and what's nearby. Water sources are very important. I actually, when I really started diving into animal behavior, the place where the knowledge is in the hunting community. I dove into hunting blogs. I learned all about how guys hunt these animals, and the knowledge in hunting is extensive in terms of what species you're looking for and what they like to do, what kind of natural bottleneck in the environment will slow them down, where will they go. So you kind of learn to look at a map like this and learn where a camera would be the most effective, I guess. So a lot of it has to do with trying to guess what animal behavior would be in that environment. Tracking is another big part of it. When you get into a good location, you start to see sign and tracks. So I put these all together just to kind of compare. I don't want to get too carried away with animal tracks, but this here is a coyote, top left. Canine prints almost always show claw marks. They do not have what's called a leading toe, one toe that sticks further forward. Like this is the coyote. This is a mountain lion over here on the right. You see no claw marks, and this toe right here sticks further forward than the other ones. That's like the middle finger or the pointy finger of a mountain lion foot, right? So we'll get a little bit more into that as we'll show each kind of animal here, but you basically have a coyote here. This one in the snow is a bobcat. There's no scale there, but it looks very much like a mountain lion, just smaller. This is a mountain lion over here in the dirt. Down here with my foot is a gray wolf. That's one of the last impact wolves, and that's just a massive dog print. I mean, I have a Great Pyrenees at home, and her prints are huge, and these are bigger. You know, they look very similar, but just bigger, shockingly big for some big wolves. And this is a bear down here on the bottom right. Bears have a big old back foot that looks almost human-like, 5 toes, and they're pretty, I mean, at least where I am, there's nothing even close to looking like what a bear would look like. So we'll look at more of those as we go through each kind of species here. We'll tell some camera trap stories. So we're going to talk about coyotes first. This is another coyote track. Another good example of a dog track with claw marks ahead of each toe. And dogs have a triangular shaped heel pad with 2 like lobes on the back, as opposed to felines, which have 3 lobes on the back. You can also, in a dog track, these outer toes are not as much in line with the front toes. And because they're further kind of back, and that's because the heel pad takes up less real estate, you can make an X in the like negative space of a dog track. I think I can actually use a pin, right? Can I do that? Let me see here. Trying to get creative with PowerPoint here. Yeah, so you can kind of see how you can make an X. So we'll compare this to a cat here, but hopefully that makes sense, where these 2 toes kind of are on the outsides. These 2 guys are in the front and the heels in the back. Dog tracks allow you to do that. Cat tracks don't. So this is a coyote. I've had a few run-ins with coyotes in person. This was my first good one where I got some fun photos of a coyote that was coming in and running around. And this sort of set me in my mind. After this happened, I had the idea of getting photos of all of the local like predators, like the Lassen County, California Hall of Predators, if you will. I thought it would be very cool to have printed images of all of them. And coyotes were first. So then I wanted to go on the mission and get the mountain lion, get the, bobcats, we've got bears. And the only way I could figure out to eventually do all that was with camera trapping. So these are couple photos of coyotes from the same encounter that sort of set me down that road. I think coyotes are underrated. Very cool animals. Okay, this is a camera trap shot, and this was early in my camera trap journey. And there's a few things going on here. This is not a great image, not something I would ever print. The camera is up too high. It's up on a tree stump. It's kind of looking over an area where there's no real rhyme or reason to where an animal might come through. The coyote's too far away from the camera. It's out of the focus point a little bit. It's a little blurry. And when I look at this kind of image now, I think, why did I set the camera up that way? Like there's no way to predict where an animal would be. The lighting's not great. But it was the beginning, right? I wouldn't say that I have a coyote camera trap image that I love more than like those ones I was just showing you. I don't have a great camera trap image of a coyote, but you can see even there, that coyote is being super cautious, looking side eye at the camera. They are very, very shy animals. And that was the only image I got out of the 4. And like I was saying before, they run when the flashes go off. They don't like that. This is a creek where I've set up quite a bit. And my mission here was to try to get an animal jumping the creek. This big old rock that the coyote's on is a launch point. I've had a trail camera on this tree for years. And I have trail camera clips of bobcats jumping the creek, foxes jumping the creek, a mountain lions jumping the creek. And I set the camera up here to try to get something in midair over the creek. I thought it would be an amazing photo. Never have gotten the critter jumping the creek camera trap image. And it's all about the timing of the trigger. Coyotes would come up and stop and get a photo like this. Foxes would just not even slow down, and they'd be on the other side of the creek before the camera would fire. Timing it is very, very hard. But this is the coyote thinking about jumping the creek, and that's probably one of the better examples of what you can do with lighting in a camera trap. The timing was good. This guy came by at the right time of the evening, but you can see how the subject is lit. My flashes are kind of focused on that rock. You've got cool twilight lighting everywhere else, and it's the kind of studio lighting that you can't duplicate in person. You kind of got to have flashes out there doing the lighting work. That's it for coyotes. That's all I've gotten, and I've never really been super into like coyote behavior or trying to track coyotes. I've looked into game calls and like calling them in. That's kind of taboo in wildlife photography too, is modifying animal behavior like that. You know, if you're going to enter a contest with a photo, they're going to want to know that you're not doing that kind of thing. So that's about the extent of my coyotes. And remember, I already had the in-person ones that I was really into. These were kind of, you know, byproduct sort of photos. Horrible photo here of a fox track. You can kind of see a toe right there. That's a fox toe, very similar to a typical dog track. They've got two lobe kind of heel toes here. There are some faint claw marks up here, but foxes are just small dogs, right? They have a very similar track to a coyote, but they're much smaller. And typically they are like on top of stuff. The gray foxes around where I live don't leave tracks very often. It's rare to find them though. In the snow, you get lucky sometimes, but they're like on top of logs. They're on top of rocks, and they're moving through pretty stealthily a lot of the time. But the gray foxes that I've had on my property were kind of my first real success and test subjects with the camera, because there are places where you can almost always predict where they're going to be. This is a log that had fallen down across a really damp spot, kind of in the woods where standing water would accumulate. And the foxes would use it as a bridge. I put a trail camera on it, and I got foxes very regularly. So I set up the camera trap at first and was looking like straight down the log, and I didn't have my trigger pointing perpendicular to the path of travel. If you try to picture the trigger of a camera trap like a beam, even though it's not a beam, you can sort of focus the beam of the trigger with these little doors that are on it, and you can shoot it across what you assume is going to be the animal's path of travel, and that will help you narrow down your focus point when you know when the camera is going to fire, where the animal is going to be when it fires. It helps a lot. I was not doing that at first, and it took me some time to figure out you don't just want to stick the trigger right in front of the camera. You want to predict the path of travel that the animal's taking and shoot that trigger across the path of travel so that you can predict right where the animal is going to be when the camera fires, and use that to make your focus point more accurate. If that path of travel is right down the top of a log like this, then your focus point becomes very easy, because you don't have to worry about depth of field. If that log is in focus, the animal on top of it is going to be in focus. So this was kind of where I figured that out. And this fox is actually looking back at one of the flashes and is just being very curious. It stood there like that for 4 photos and gave me the portraits that I was kind of after. So foxes kind of are my backyard project, because I can somewhat regularly predict that they're going to be around. This is a pair of foxes in the same spot. That's, I think, the male, and that's the female, just because the male is a little bit bigger. But same sort of deal. So in this case, I've got 2 flashes kind of on either side, like at 45-degree angles coming into the subject. And I believe these were both at the same intensity. I did not have one brighter than the other. It was a little bit further down the road before I started adding a 3rd flash. and I've used them for like a backlight. In fact, I think the next image might be, yeah. So this is a different log, different scene. But here I've got a kind of a rim light going on. I've got a flash behind that log on the other side of the log looking up, and it really kind of lights up some of this, hair on the tail, and gives you kind of a different feel than just the front lighting on this one. This is a fox in a snowstorm that came by. I got a bobcat at this same camera set that I'll show you later, but the flashes are kind of freezing the snow in the air, and kind of creating almost a night sky sort of look with the snow hanging there. I got a couple here, same sort of deal. But gray foxes are fun. We'll talk more. Sandy was mentioning earlier about the Sierra Nevada red fox. That's my current mission, and we'll talk about that here at the end. But this was actually a camera set for a mountain lion that I had gotten on trail camera moving through this spot, and a fox came and tripped the camera. So this is too dark, right? This is a situation where I think one flash either didn't fire, or I had them set too low. The flash batteries get tired, and every once in a while you'll take 3 or 4 pictures, and 1 or 2 of them you'll only get 1 flash to fire, and sometimes it creates a cool accidental scene, but this is a little dark, and it couldn't be sort of saved in the edit. I should mention editing too is a big part of it. Your camera trap images will be usually on one end of the histogram or the other, and often you're bringing down all the highlights in the edit. I use Lightroom for just about everything, and everything's edited. I don't shoot anything in JPEG. I'm always shooting in RAW and always editing in Lightroom. You can get away with a lot in the edit of a camera trap photo because the lighting is so foreign to what people expect, I think. Like in the background here, you don't know what you're going to see when those flashes go off. You might see trees, you might see just blackness, you might see a whole scene back there if it's twilight. But when you're editing these photos, you can push the highlights way up or way down. You can get away with quite a bit. Same thing with shadows, blacks and whites. You can really adjust because it's not a scene that our eyes are used to. I also almost always have to adjust the temperature to the warmer end on a camera trap image. Usually maybe it's a characteristic of those Nikon flashes, but they usually come out very cold. So same gray fox here, probably just posed really perfect for me on that log. But this is a behavior that I've learned about gray foxes is if there is a log, they're going to be on it. They're going to use that to walk through that spot. They're not going to walk next to the log. They're going to be on top of the log. Gray foxes and logs are like peas and carrots, man. They hang out. So if you want to get a camera trap image of a gray fox, find the log bridges that it's using to get through the area. They love them. This is an in-person fox photo I just threw in here because I thought it was fun. This one was this was the Sierra Nevada Conservancy photo of the year for 2023. And this fox was actually barking at its kits. I didn't know that it had babies that were hiding, and it was barking like a warning that I was there. And I never saw the babies. I was leaving. I was driving away and turned around, and the babies had come out and joined mom after she called them out of hiding after I'd left the scene. But gray foxes often get accused of being red foxes because they have a lot of red on their chest, especially. But gray foxes all have a black, it's called a dorsal stripe on their tail, and they all have a black tip on the tail. You can see it here. So if it's a black tip on the tail, it's a gray fox. If it's a white tip on the tail, it's a red fox. So there's my foxes. So then the foxes were done. My hall of predators was expanding, right? I had the coyote, had the fox, the bobcat is what got me into camera trapping. Um, I think I have this photo. Yeah. Okay. This was an in-person encounter. I had taken a bunch of photos the day before this for my church. And we were going to put together a little video, and I was running around town taking photos, very small photo, like low resolution JPEGs on my camera. And this is the dumbest thing you could ever do. Don't do this. I've only done it once in my life, and this was it, right? But I took photos all day, low resolution JPEGs. I had a 50mm lens on the camera, and I came home and just stuck the camera on a shelf, didn't adjust anything back, didn't change the lens. Like when my camera's laying around at home now, I've got a big old zoom lens. It's like wildlife ready all the time. But a bobcat strolled through the field next to the house, and I went running outside, grabbed my camera, and I'm looking down going, oh, I've got a 50mm lens. What am I going to do with this? Managed to take these photos. It sat down and looked at me. This is heavily cropped and, everything you don't want. Tiny image. And then I looked at the file, and it's this tiny little JPEG. Anyway, it was like motivation to do things right the next time and to get a photo of a bobcat, because I didn't have a good one. It felt like everybody on social media has bobcats like laying around the backyard. Like they're everywhere. And in my case, I never see them. I see tracks. I see them on trail cameras. It's always 3 a.m. I never run into them. So this was the beginning of my journey. The deer photo that I actually grabbed, the one we talked about, right? The one that was recently awarded, was the carcass that this bobcat had like claimed. So I found that carcass in like November. I put a trail camera on it. Didn't get any action for a couple of months. Everything froze up. We had a big snowstorm, and nobody found this carcass. I thought a bear was going to find it, but eventually a bobcat found it. And I wound up getting, this is actually a video, maybe. I don't know if I can make it play or not. I don't know if it's a video. Maybe it's not. I got a ton of bobcat footage. Oh yeah, it is. So this is just an example of hours and hours of this bobcat. The deer is kind of buried to the left side of the screen in the snow right there, and this bobcat just made itself at home. Right before this big snowstorm, I went out and set up a photo blind about 30, 40 yards away, and I was getting up at like 4 a.m. and sneaking out into my photo blind and waiting, hoping to get a glimpse of this bobcat in the early part of daylight, at 5:36. Never happened. I was killing myself with sleep. I was never able to get a good photo. Those hours in the photo blind are where I started deciding, okay, I'm going to learn how to make a camera trap, and I'm gonna get a photo of this bobcat. Fast forward almost a year. This is the same log, same bobcat. Bobcat's down here. This is a video also. You can see one of my flashes right here. And this was forever later, but this was when the bobcat finally came in and gave me my photo. You see, that was a flash that just went off there. And you see its photo being taken right there. And this bobcat, this is like a 3-minute video. I won't make you suffer through the whole thing, but it basically hung out for like 3 minutes, looking at my camera, sniffing around. That sniff thing right there, that's it's not making any noise. That is called the Fleeman response. That's like it's sniffing. It's a more effective way to smell the air, but just sitting there posing. So if I'd had my trigger closer to where this camera was, I would have gotten hundreds of photos of this bobcat, but I wound up getting that one when it was walking in. And this was a huge victory. After this was almost 3 full years after the day that I did not get the photo because my camera was all messed up. So sweet reward. And this was another big camera trap success. So in this case, I have my trigger is like back here behind this tree, and the beam of the trigger is pointing across the log. My focus point was a guess, but it was where I assumed an animal would wind up. the delay that the trigger, there's a slight delay when it senses motion before the camera fires. I assumed the animal was going to keep walking forward and was gonna be right about there when the camera fired. And this bobcat cooperated, perfectly in this case, which is not always the case, but in this case it worked perfect. This is Outdoor Photographer magazine. They contacted me. They saw it on social media and asked me to write up a camera trapping thing and explain how I did it. And super cool. They promised me money and all that, and never got paid for this article. Outdoor Photographer magazine was going bankrupt at the time, and I didn't know it. And it was in one of the last issues before they just vanished off the face of the earth before they paid me. So let that be a lesson. Get paid first, I guess. I don't know, but it was still an honor. I was flattered to do it, but paychecks are nice too. Since then, I've had more success with bobcats. This is one going the wrong way. This is a same spot that fox was. There's a moth like silhouetted on its side right there. I thought was pretty cool. It stirred up some moths. But I've had more luck with bobcats in the years after. It was like this huge dry spell, and then they just decided to cooperate with me. So this one's kind of cool. There's two of these images. It's actually walking in a mountain lion's footprints right here. I set up the camera to get a mountain lion. My neighbors had a deer kill that was kind of out of frame behind us here, and the mountain lion had come in a couple times. I went and set up my camera and never got the lion, never came back, but I got this bobcat. And this was actually just on the cover of a fun local magazine here in Lassen County just this month. So this is around town right now. But this image, excuse me, let me get a drink real quick. This image has 3 flashes at work. The trigger is out of frame over here on the left. And it's same sort of thing. I knew the path of travel, so I set up the trigger like a beam across the path. My main flash is right next to the trigger, very low over here. And the other 2 flashes are up really high and almost overexposed the side of the bobcat in this flash. So I compensated a lot in the edit to bring this one down. But it worked out nicely. This was same scene where that fox was, and you can actually see over here the glow from this flash that is like just out of frame in a bush right here. And the bobcat is clearly checking out that flash, and you can see what you wouldn't want, I guess, in a portrait is this obvious like big beam of light from your light source. I think it works because it's so foreign. This whole image is it's not anything you could ever really see with your eyes anyway. The flashes are freezing the snow. It's sort of this confusing pine needle snowy landscape, and the light to me just added a little bit of mystery to the whole thing, because you can't figure out what that cat is looking at over there. But this one was fun. You could actually crop that down further and get rid of all that light if you wanted to, and have a more natural kind of image. But I liked the mystery of that glow just out of the frame over there in this one.
Is that snow coming down?
It is. So it was snowing pretty hard, and it freezes because the flashes all kind of freeze it in the same spot. A lot of people thought this was a night sky image when I took it, and you can actually do that with long exposure. If you set your camera to take a long exposure with a starry sky background, you can get a camera trap image with an animal in the foreground and like the Milky Way in the background. Not easy, and you only get one shot at it, but this was all just snow. Yeah. Oh, gory graphic warning. Sorry. This is a deer kill that a mountain lion had taken out. My neighbors had a mountain lion on their trail cameras. By the way, it's awesome to have neighbors with trail cameras who will invite you over to set up your camera trap. It just kind of expands your network a little bit. But This was the fattest bobcat I've ever seen. This guy came in and claimed this deer and was just um, massive. This image, this is a funny one because this was what it's looking at right now is me driving up in my Jeep to check my camera. It heard me coming, and I checked the timestamp on the image, and it was the next image was my hand reaching into the camera case. So it was right there. I never saw it, but it was probably nearby in a tree watching me check the camera. But this one was in the Sacramento Bee newspaper. For some reason, they jumped on this one. Saw it on Facebook. By the way, you mentioned Instagram, like that's the only social media platform. And for a lot of people, it really is. And I'm horrible at it. I'm trying to do better at Instagram. I've always been a Facebook guy, and it makes me feel old to go on Instagram and try to figure it out. But Instagram is the future, I guess, or now it's like the present, and who knows what the future is. But
I think it's just where you start, where you started,
yeah, I'm trying to make that transition to Instagram, but it's tough. Okay, bears. Let's talk about bears. We'll shift gears. So we got some of the big predators around here, but bears are like something you want to get pictures of, but they're notorious for messing with camera equipment and breaking things. Just out of curiosity, like they'll sniff your camera and then take a bite out of it because why not? And I've never actually set up cameras intentionally targeting bears. I've set up on carcasses and had bears show up. I've set up on game trails and had bears show up. But bears are a little bit scary when it comes to camera trapping. We'll get to mountain lions, but this was a camera that I set up when I was tracking down a mountain lion and trying to get a photo next to this big old cedar tree. And this bear showed up in the middle of the day, which was total surprise. I have video of this one that I posted on my Facebook page, and it was so funny. It's like this bear, the cameras went off and the bear just froze and started looking around like it knew it was in trouble, like it had done something that it shouldn't have done, and it was just looking really sheepish and timid about the whole thing. Didn't run, it didn't mess with anything, but it just stood there for a while and looked around. And I got like 4 photos of this bear. This is the same image, and it's a composite photo with me sort of slapped in there on Photoshop, right? The story here is that I posted this on social media, and everybody said that this bear was the biggest bear they'd ever seen. And I've found that if you post a picture of a mountain lion on social media, it is either skinny and starving and going to eat your pets, or it's pregnant. That's it. That's all they ever are. They're skinny, starving, or pregnant. Bears are all the biggest bear anyone has ever seen in the world. Like that's the social media wisdom about bears, is that they are all huge. And I was kind of looking at this going, I don't think that's that big. I mean, it's a average kind of black bear. This is by the way, this is a California black bear. And they're very brown a lot of the time. We have cinnamon colored black bears that are not a grizzly. They're not a brown bear. They just look brown, but they're a black bear. So anyway, I went out to the camera and, jumped in front of the camera and squatted down, took my own photo, and then put the two together in Photoshop to sort of compare the size. So I'm 6'2", so that's at least a 300 plus pound bear, but it's not the massive bear that people thought it was on social media. But that brings up, the camera trap is a tripod. It's in the same spot, and you can put together cool composite photos with a camera trap because you can take multiple photos of different subjects in the same location. There's a skinnier black bear. This was the camera that I set up when I was tracking the wolves that we were trying to get. And this is a lighting situation that I wanted to talk about, because I've got the trigger is like off to the left. There's a game trail in this spot. It looks like a clearing, but it was a pretty packed down game trail that bear is actually on. So it wasn't just a shot in the dark as far as where I was setting up. It was a pretty established trail. There were little burned out trees everywhere. This was right after a huge wildfire that we had called the Dixie Fire in California. Um, and I found this trail. I'd found wolf tracks. I was setting up for wolves, and this bear came and took like 10 photos of itself. And it was a dark animal in a dark black night, and it was right on the edge of where my lighting was the most effective. And it actually is just getting a little bit lucky with the lighting because I wish that it was closer to the camera. Um, I wish that my focus point was closer to the camera. If I could redo this whole set, I would do it differently. But there are 3 flashes here, and none of them are really putting the hot spot on that bear. The good illumination is all in the foreground. I had to get kind of creative with editing to get any kind of good portrait out of this. But this is another shot, same scene. The bear is looking up at my flash, which is just in a tree branch kind of up here. And it was, I think, considering jumping up and slapping that thing around, but it just stood there and looked. It never actually jumped. That's my old website, by the way, on that watermark. Ignore that. It's not me anymore. This is the actual one that I wound up getting out of that whole series that I edited and printed that I've sold that people like, because it's such a like a low key kind of edit. It worked really well for that because the lighting was so dim anyway. But it just kind of, it lent itself to that type of edit. And that's a good example of the kind of extremes you can push the editing to in an image like this, because this is basically the natural lighting of the flashes, same scene, and then that's the the final product with kind of the low key style of edit. And that image I have printed, I have sold. It's not the sharpest image. It's a little bit out of my focus point. It's a little bit soft, but it works in that sort of, say I'm pretty picky about focus being perfect. Sometimes you get what you get with a camera trap. Here's a big old bear. This was this last winter. This was actually a couple months ago. My family was out in the woods looking for a Christmas tree. This was right after Thanksgiving. We were on our Christmas tree hunt, and there were a bunch of birds that kind of alerted me to something being dead in the woods. And I went poking around and found this deer carcass, which I think was the work of a mountain lion. It looked like that. It was kind of half buried. Mountain lions will sort of cover up their prey. So I went home, got a camera, brought it back, set it up, and this is what I got. I didn't get a mountain lion. It was pretty close to a road, and I was nervous about leaving equipment in this particular spot because it wasn't very private, really. So I just left it out one night, and this bear came by and took some photos behind this deer. And actually, this one is a little bit blurry. Also, it's a little bit out of the focus point, but didn't mess with my camera. Didn't do anything weird. But it moved the deer around and kind of took the composition that I had away, and I kind of had to deal with it. Like in the edit, it would have been a better photo if the camera hadn't gotten moved. But the lighting situation here, I wish I had a backlight lighting up this kind of area of the woods back here. I think it would be a better image. But again, bears are nothing I've ever targeted or tried to get a bear. They just kind of show up whenever they want, and you just are thankful that they don't eat things. Okay, how are we doing? Are we boring? Are we
You're
doing all right?
not you're not boring. Um, I, we're going over just a little bit. I'm not too worried about that because I'm recording it, and if people need to leave, they can come back and watch it. But I just thought I
Yeah.
would get that. But yeah, no, I'm not bored. In fact, I'm wondering, like I've learned so much just looking at the prints, the tracks. I'm like, tell us more about that. But that's just my
We could
personal
go
selfish
we could
thing.
do that forever, right? All right, well, I'll kind of rifle. We're almost there. I've got mountain lions and the wolf photo, but we
But
can.
yeah, don't skip the mountain lions and please don't skip that wolf.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let me know if there's any questions or anything. But this
Nope.
is a mountain lion track. So we'll dive into that. Mountain lion toes are not like a dog toe. They're kind of almond shaped. They almost have a point.
Yeah.
They do not normally leave claw marks when they walk. Um, I've seen claw marks in the snow or on slippery stuff, but it's usually they don't leave them. And remember before we were talking about with the dog track with the X on a mountain lion, if you tried to make an X in that negative space, you can't, right? You kind of you bump into the heel pad and it doesn't work. The heel pad is way bigger. There's three like lobes on the back of the heel pad instead of two. And the heel takes up way more real estate than a dog track. That's your quick 30 seconds on mountain lion tracks, but that's how you know you're getting into one. And they're bigger. They're you know, that's my fist next to a pretty average mountain lion track. This would be a rear foot right here, overstepping a front foot that's back here, right, with the way that they kind of walk. Same sort of deal. This would be a front foot. Front feet are bigger on a mountain lion. They're like meat hooks, right? And the back ones are a little bit smaller, but this would be a back foot sort of stepping in front. This is the print that the bobcat from that other photo was walking in, that I showed you there. This is a faint one, but it's in sand, but it's clearly a mountain lion if you know what you're looking at. Same thing. You got your three bump heel back here, and no way to make an X in the negative space. No claw marks. Obvious mountain lion track. This is some trail cam footage of a mountain lion that I set up at a deer carcass, and this is the mountain lion that I actually saw in person. You're seeing over here some reflections of like eyeballs. That's just reflection of the infrared light in the lion's eyes, from the cheap lens of a trail camera. But this was a very cool discovery because it was right next to my property, and I actually went down and got all camouflaged up and sat in a bush and waited for this cat to come back. And it came back in the twilight, and I was able to get a few photos of it in person. This was when it heard my shutter clicking on my camera and looked at me and tried to figure out what I was doing, and went on its way after that. And I went back inside, but this was about 100 yards behind my house, which is very fun for me. Wouldn't be fun for everybody maybe, but it was a very cool experience. Very, very amazing animals, I think, mountain lions. I went on a kind of 2-week mission to get a photo of this mountain lion. And this is the one in the print behind me that we were talking about before, but the trying to like sum it all up here. This trail camera is a stealth cam, and it will send, it's a cellular trail cam. So it will send me a thumbnail image on my phone when it takes an image. And I got pictures of this mountain lion 2 nights in a row. And anytime you see a mountain lion on your trail camera 2 nights in a row, it probably means it's hanging out in the area and it's got a kill nearby. There's some reason that it's sticking around. They're very nomadic. They move around a lot. But when you get it a couple nights in a row, it's probably working on a meal somewhere. So I went down to the spot and I found this, which is a scrape site. All this ground that's torn up here is where mountain lions will kind of mark their territory. They'll scrape away the pine needles and like scent mark in the ground. So this is like a gold mine for a trail camera or a camera trap, because you know that cat's going to come back eventually. So I set up a camera and I got a whole bunch of different footage of this cat in this area. This is that scrape site right here. I have this a YouTube series on this, by the way. If you find my YouTube channel, there's like four videos chronicling this quest for this photo. But this is just some video footage of it coming in. I have my camera set up off to the side in this case, did not get a photo of this moment. And I went on this like 3-day adventure of getting photos of the back side of this cat. I should say 2-week adventure really, but I would set up my camera and it would come through in the wrong direction. And then I would move my camera and then it would come through in the right direction, and which was now the wrong direction, over and over and over again. I got a couple good profile shots, but I couldn't get a picture of the face. But it was all in the same location. There's a good example of the tail end of this mountain lion moving through. I actually really like this image, but again, it's not the face shot that I was after. A couple weeks of it passing, so it must have made a couple different kills in the area and was really hanging out. This is a video of the photo that I actually got of this mountain lion. So just to set it up here, my hope was to get the mountain lion right next to this tree, which is where that bear was. It came through way over here next to this little sapling on this side. So I had to crop the image down because it cropped off the edge of the mountain lion here, but you can see it looking right at the camera because I just moved the camera again. And in my mind, it's trying to figure out why that box has moved again as it comes through the area. But this is in slow-mo. As you can see, the flash is firing. The cat is not even worried about that at all. It walks right up to the camera box and gives it a little sniff. And stands there for a second, smelling my camera box, and then moves on. And then this is a couple of the images that I got from that kind of moment. Same kind of thing we were talking about with the edit. I mean, you can see how bright it is right there, and the flashes sort of darken the background of your image a little bit. It worked out nicely in this case, but you can do a lot with the lighting. I almost, again, because my hope was over here, my flash is very close to the side of the cat over here, and it almost overexposed this like side of the mountain lion. So that was the first one. That's the one I actually printed that's on the wall behind me. But this is the extreme edge of the frame. So I had to crop that horizontal frame down into a vertical portrait to get kind of what I could get out of it. But it has given me absolute eye contact with the camera and was a sweet reward for quite a couple weeks of drama trying to get that photo. But again, the trigger here is just out of frame, shooting across. It cooperated in the way it came through the area and the way it tripped the trigger and the focus point. It was just way too far over here on the left side of my frame compared to where I thought it was going to be. But again, you get what you get. And that brings up also, usually when I set up a camera trap, I will shoot wide and crop in on the edit because of this kind of thing. I mean, this guy was way over on the side. I wish the tail was in this frame. I wish I had more of this cool little tree and the rest of the cat. It would be amazing. But this was about as wide as I could shoot in that spot. So shoot wide, crop later is kind of the mantra. A couple more shots of mountain lions doing their thing. This is more typical, right? This is like, imagine how great this photo would be if there are so many of these things that happen with camera trapping, because you can't predict, you can't adjust. But that cat is like looking at something, it's probably super alert. That would be an amazing photo if I'd panned the camera to the right, but I didn't. That's actually the frame right before is that one. So I got a decent photo there. This shows the back foot really well.
Can you, Andy's got a question in here, and maybe you said it and I missed it too, so don't worry, Andy. What lens are you using?
Yeah, I use almost always the like 18 to 55 kit lens that came with a lot of those Canon cameras. You can get them for like 50, 60 bucks on eBay, and they don't need to be very special. I've used wider stuff, but generally that's the one, the 18 to 55. And I usually shoot around like the wide end, maybe as tight as I'll shoot is maybe like 24 or so. depending on the situation, but usually I'm shooting about 18, 20 millimeters on a crop sensor most of the time. So it's a little tighter than that, but this was same location a little bit later in the year, going through the wrong way again, but that's what they do because they're cats. This was another deer kill a neighbor found and let me set up a camera. In this case, I have a backlight right here that's in that bush that I actually just got a little bit lucky that the cat was tall enough. I kind of was guessing at where I was going to put that. I wanted to light up like a rim light, but it almost was peeking over the top of the cat's back and blew the whole image. But sometimes you gotta risk the setup, you know, for the shot you're hoping to get. Okay, wolves, real quick. We got time to talk about wolves?
Yes.
All right.
Even if it's just me and you, yes.
Yes. Okay. So wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone in 1995 and Idaho, Yellowstone and Idaho, and portion of Idaho in 95. They have slowly expanded over the years. They've come through Washington, Oregon, and more recently into the northern part of California. My little quest for a wolf shot was in 2021 when there was only 2 packs that were known to be in the state. One had already kind of disappeared. There was a Shasta pack that they're not really sure what happened to them. They might have met their fate with local ranchers or moved away. They're not really sure. But the Lassen pack were not far from home and were something I really, really wanted. So we had a big forest fire. I had gone in and set up cameras. I had to pull everything out because of the forest fire. The next fall, I was finally able to get back in. This was like a 2-year kind of mission to get a wolf shot. But when I went back in the fall after the fire, I found prime tracking conditions because of forest fire ash and dirt, and there was no like litter on the forest floor, you know, pine needles and stuff. So tracking was actually relatively easy. And when I got into wolf tracks, I found a trail that they were using in both directions, which wolves move around a lot. They're pretty nomadic, especially during that time of year when they're not pinned down to a den or anything. And so having a trail where they were going in 2 directions was like a gold mine. So that's what I wound up setting up on. But these are some of the tracks that I came across from the wolves in the woods. So you can see the forest floor is just dirt. I mean, a few little pine needle bits here and there, but it was mostly very, very empty. So wolf tracks, again, if you know what a dog track looks like, they're just a massive dog track. This was a trail camera composite image of a coyote on this side and a wolf on this side, just to show the size difference between a gray wolf and a coyote. Most people have seen a coyote, you kind of know the size. Wolves are just big animals. So this was when I knew I was on the right track. I got a couple different trail cam images. This is a video, I believe. That black one never showed up on my camera trap, and I wish that it did. But there's 3 of them in this video, 2 gray ones and a black one. And this was, I believe, they were on their way kind of up. My camera trap is like up in this neighborhood, and they went and took some photos in this moment here as they kind of worked their way up there. This was the image that I wound up with, and that I was talking about with that contest. What made it such a special image was the time of day that the wolves showed up. There was like 6:30 in the morning, so there was enough ambient light to kind of show the forest fire aftermath in the background. And this was national news. This was one of the biggest forest fires in state history, and it was major destruction, and it burned this whole environment where these wolves were living, and people weren't sure if the wolves had survived. So to capture this moment of, you know, this animal coming out of this forest fire destruction, such a rare animal in this rare moment, this image was very special. And it works because of the time of day that the wolf actually showed up. So The lighting we talked about with the bear, how the bear was kind of at the back edge of the light and didn't really get in the hot spot. That wolf just walked right into that kind of photo studio, and um, it's just this perfect studio lighting on a wild animal that you can't do any other way. You know, that's to me that's what camera trapping is so fun for, is that you can create sort of a mood or a scene that you wouldn't get otherwise. Um, this was actually a cropped image. This guy, it was way over on the right side. I think I had the whole thing. And he had this goofy look on his face. And I think it's a reaction to seeing the camera and not knowing what it is, and it's like sniffing or something. But it looked so funny compared to this like perfect specimen of a wolf right here. I had to crop it out for the final image. But this was, everybody called it Smiley. This was Smiley, the friendliest Lassen pack wolf. But this was a one and done camera trap thing. I got this one image. The camera took multiple images and they took off. They didn't like the flash. And when I went back to check the camera again a week later, they had not gone back through there at all. So I pulled everything out. I felt a little weird about leaving camera stuff in there, and I had the image that I'd kind of been trying to get. But this was a very sweet deal, and this was the first image from me that a lot of people saw. This one went really, really big on Facebook, and kind of put me on the map, I guess, for a lot of people. So that completed my haul of predators for Lassen County, and the journey continues with camera trapping. So we talked a little bit about the Sierra Nevada red fox. This is an endangered, super rare fox along the Sierra crest at very high elevations. I've got like a 25 episode YouTube thing chronicling I'm on year 3. This will be my 3rd summer trying to get a camera trap image. I've gotten one. And this is one of these little guys. It has a radio collar on. This one was part of a study. And this is an old female fox that the biologists that I talked to were very excited to see a picture of, because the collar, I guess, is no longer working and they weren't sure if it was still alive. Not a great photo, but an incredibly rare photo, and kind of motivates me to get a gallery worthy image of one of these animals. They think there's maybe there's less than 100 in the whole state of California. There's maybe more like 50 or 60. So this is my current quest, and I'm in Lassen Volcanic National Park under permit with my cameras, trying to get these guys. So that's what I've been up to. A couple of random shots. That's a pine marten that I've never really targeted, that just kind of showed up. This is a wood rat, like pack rat, that ran through the camera. A striped skunk. Things you don't try to get photos of that wind up. There's some bats on that fox camera that triggered the camera, and a golden eagle that visited that same deer carcass that the bear was at. So anyway, that's it. That's all I got for you. That's my social stuff. Track me down, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have anything else.
There was one in here. Let me scroll back through and find it. I think it was from Andy. This is when you were showing the wolf photos. He was curious, was that the Dixie fire?
It was, yes, and Dixie Fire kind of straddled Lassen and Plumas counties largely, and that was in Lassen County. But if you look, I mean, I don't want to get very specific on social media or whatever, but they publish where these wolf packs generally hang out, and if you look at the Lassen pack map on the California Fish and Wildlife website, it's kind of the whole area between Lassen and Plumas counties, like straddling the border, which is kind of right where that fire went through. But that's basically where it was.
I'm definitely sharing this chat with you because there are a lot of really nice comments in here for you. Um, a couple of things. One, I love and I wish that we could do more of the tracks, the little paw prints, because
Uh-huh.
so I grew up in South Texas, and now I'm bringing shame upon my family. my family are hunters and fishermen, and my brothers know all the things. And me as a girl, I know nothing. So this was fascinating to me. It's like, oh, now I can contribute to a conversation, maybe. We have lots of coyotes and bobcats and lots of deer. Um,
Mhm.
that mountain lion's paws, oh my goodness, absolutely huge, enormous, very
A
intimidating.
mountain lion's front foot is massive, and that image you can see on that camera trap photo.
Right.
Um, their fronts can be almost twice as big as the rears because they are. That's the working end of a mountain lion, right? They've just got a massive front foot. Yeah,
That would be absolutely intimidating to run across one of those.
yeah.
We have a lot of, I shouldn't say we have a lot of, but we do have bobcats, where I grew
Mhm.
up and on the ranch. So,
Gray wolves are the same as far as the discrepancy in size. A wolf's front feet are way bigger than their rear because most of their body weight is in their like head and chest, and they're very lean in the rear end, and their back feet are much smaller.
yeah, they're intimidating. So, thank you for sharing all of this. I thought, okay, this is interesting to me. I'm wondering how it will go over with the room. And the room is like, don't stop. Let him talk.
Well, thank you. Sorry I
I,
got long
yeah.
there, but
Oh no, no, that does not bother me at all. For me, it's fascinating, and it's something I don't know anything about. Probably within the last 3 or 4 months, I'm listening to more and more wildlife podcasts, and I watch a lot of
mhm.
YouTube and camera trapping. Those are the buzzwords I'm hearing, but I haven't really, looked for any videos on them. So, one, because it sounds intimidating to me. It seems technical, and it seems like there's a lot of planning, which
I
there
think
is.
there's the equipment is getting more and more user friendly, but the results come with understanding animal behavior. I think
That's that's exactly right. And that to me
Mhm.
is very intimidating because I'm new to wildlife photography. So I know my little blue jay in the backyard. I know what he's going to do. I can predict that bird. But these other animals, this is a whole learning curve. So I absolutely loved your bobcat photos. That whole series, probably my favorite of
Right on. Thank you.
yeah, just because I don't have any good pictures of bobcats. I've got kitty cat envy. So,
Well, that was the motivation. Everybody else had a bobcat photo, so maybe I can motivate you to go get
I,
yours.
I definitely, I try, every time I get an opportunity to go down to my brother's ranch, I'm waiting, I'm looking, and,
Yeah,
they'll tell
it
me,
only took me 3 years,
well,
so start now and have one by 2028.
well, I've been working on it for a few years, and so far, nothing, zilch, but that's okay. That's what keeps me going back.
That patience is the biggest the biggest
The hurdle.
skill set, I think, is just being able to wait it out a lot of times. Yeah.
And I know you just met me, but this is something you need to know. I have no patience. I want it now. Randy, thank you so much for coming and sharing what you know and showing some beautiful photos that not everybody is going to experience for themselves. So you just kind of took us to the forest, to the woods, to the backstory of these photos, and that in itself was just a pleasure to get to experience, just kind of feeling like we were there. So thank you for your time. I don't know if I can, but I might try to twist your arm and have you come back and do another presentation for us. So,
Yeah, I'm
all right.
I'm down. Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate
Oh, great. Okay. Did y'all hear that? Because I recorded.
it.
All right. Next week, Russell Graves returns with his presentation, Elevate Your Photography Through Insightful Feedback. So, this is going to be an image review session. So, if you'd like to submit a photo for Russell to review, please send your photo to me at info@lindanickell.com before January 20th. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.